When reviewing present subjunctive and conjunctions, you have to first know what conjunctions are. Those are words or phrases that connect different words or clauses of a sentence. They usually describe how, when, why, or where an action takes place. When to use the subjunctive. You use the subjunctive when the situation is hypothetical and when there's conjunction. You could also use it when there's uncertainty in whether the event will take place or not. But mostly, if the event is hypothetical or could happen or could not happen, we use the subjunctive after conjunctions. When using conjunctions in the subjunctive, there are always a couple of conjunctions that require using the subjunctive. Here are some of them. One is a menos que, antes que, con tal que, in caso que, para que, and sin que. So these 6 will always require you to use the subjunctive after these conjunctions are used in a sentence. Now we're doing conjunctions and infinitives. And some of the first ones that I showed you, the conjunctions that were always required the subjunctive, well, sometimes after those you can put infinitives. So after these 3 conjunctions, antes de que, para que, and sin que, if there is no subject change, the infinitive of the verb is used in the sentence. So like I said before, here is an example of using the infinitive after a conjunction antes de. So remember, we always use the infinitive if there's no subject change inside the sentence. So this sentence says, we will call you before leaving the house. So the beginning subject is we, seeing like the verb form, the sotros, which means we. And at the very end of the sentence, it says, we will call you before leaving the house. We are still leaving the house, so we are still the subject of the sentence, meaning we use the verb salir in the infinitive instead of conjugating salir in the subjunctive. Using the subjunctive versus using the indicative, there are a couple of conjunctions that you need to know that you could choose whether to use the subjunctive with or whether to use the indicative with. These 6 are cuando, después de que, and cuanto, hasta que, tan pronto como, and es seguro. So these different expressions require you to either use the subjunctive or the indicative after, depending on the situation and the context around it. Using the conjunctions that I showed you before, you would use the subjunctive after a future action or command. So with a future action and command and a conjunction, you would use the subjunctive, like shown here. In the verb desarrollar, I conjugated it to desarrollemos because it needs the subjunctive. The sentence says, we are going to solve the problem when we develop new technology. So I use the verb desarrollar as to develop, and I conjugated it into the subjunctive because the sentence is expressing a future action we are going to solve. Okay, so when to use the indicative. You use the indicative when there's a past action or habitual action in the main clause. For an example, this sentence, contaminando rio cuando construyen nuevos edificios. Construyen is conjugated in the indicative because this sentence is expressing a past action that when they build the new buildings, the river gets contaminated. So now for the interactive activity. Question number 1. We will call you tomorrow before you leave. What would you put in place of you leave inside the sentence? Would it be A salgas, B salir, or C sales? You said A salgas, you were right because you use the subjunctive when there's a subject change. The subject changed from we to you. And so even with using antes de, if there is a subject change, you still use the subjunctive. Question number 2. Vamos comer el pastel cuando Juan blank on nuestra casa. So we are going to eat the cake when Juan arrives. What should we put for arrives? A llega or B llegue? If you said B llegue, you are correct because the very beginning of the sentence it says vamos comer. That means we are going to eat. That is expressing a future action, so we would be using the subjunctive instead of the indicative. Now on to question number 3. Do I use the subjunctive in A. Hypothetical situation, B. Past or habitual action, or C. Both A or B. In a hypothetical situation, you are correct because past actions or habitual actions are always going to be in the indicative when there is a past action in the main clause. Now for the last question on the quiz for extra candy and stuff. Which one of these does not belong? Some of them, actually all of them except one, all require the subjunctive after these conjunctions are used, but there's one that does not require the subjunctive. Which one is it? Is it A. A menos que, B. Para que, C. Hasta que, D. Antes que, E. Sin que, or F. En caso que? Said hasta que, you are correct, because remember at the beginning of the video I showed you the list of the conjunctions that require subjunctive. Well, it wasn't on there. For watching my review on the present subjunctive and conjunctions, and good luck in your finals. I hope this helped you in some way.